Right, thank you everyone. I'm doing a retake of these and I want to give you a small presentation on the Northcote Aquatic Centre, which is a 6-star Green Star design 50-meter outdoor pool, 24-meter indoor pool, lunch swimming pool, hot pool and spa, as well as classes and gym. It's a fully electric building with no gas connection at all. So first, I want to start by thanking the Warangan people who opened this aquatic center in a smoking ceremony that was held in the opening of the aquatic center, but also because they helped us in the design of this center. So when they were consulted, they said they wanted to reflect the resilience of the Wiradjuri people and their storytelling culture. That's why you will see on the western facade the kingfisher. So the kingfisher represents the kingfisher returns to the environment since there's an equilibrium in the environment and also reflects that resilience of the Wiradjuri people. Also the storytelling, and that's why you'll see a permanent ceremonial pit outside, as well as those oyster shell seats that you see in the outside of the building. But you will also notice other details such as the billabongs in the aquatic place, the platypus in some of the signs. So all these were captured when we did the consultation with them. So I want to thank them for being part of this project. And it is very important that we embed traditional knowledge, that we share their story. And that's why Caring for Country is actually the first pillar of our climate emergency plan that has been endorsed by Council in July this year. And it is one of our most important pillars. The second pillar is actually towards zero emissions Darebin, and this graphic reflects the emissions reduction that we went through in our operations when we talk about how we run and how we have been committed to emissions reduction. It is very important to notice that big drop. So that happened around 2021, and two main things happened for Darebin. One was the VCO contract. So the VCO contract is one of the biggest undertaken by local government, where we buy renewable energy for 51 councils. So this is a very strong power purchase agreement. The other one is actually the shutdown of NARC. So in our 2019-2020 reporting period, NARC was actually responsible for about 30% of our total emissions. And currently, we only have one remaining aquatic center that's running on gas, and actually responsible for about 24% of our carbon emissions, and up to 68% of our natural gas use. So aquatic centers are actually one of your most energy demanding centers and highly responsible of your emissions, unless of course you have landfills in your local areas. So what's there in NARC? So as I mentioned, there's a 50-meter pool, there's an indoor pool, there's an indoor lunch swim pool, there's an hydrotherapy pool, jacuzzi, sauna, steam room, gym, 4 fitness centers, and a cafe. So where do we start, right? So to understand where to start, of course, we need to understand the energy use. And of course, the heating of the pools takes most of the energy requirements. I do want to highlight before we move on that the steam room and sauna actually are quite high energy intense, and even though they are less than 0.5% of the surface area, they account for over 5% of the energy use of your center. So do consider them when you're doing the design. So what about the pools actually? So first you actually need to nail your passive design before we move to our active design. So For example, insulation in the pool is very important. So all the pools in NARC have been insulated. Pool covers are very efficient when trying to keep indoor and outdoor pool temperatures. Wind protection. Actually, also radiation heating, so we're trying to capture as much as the sunlight as you can. So the NARC facade actually protects the pool, the outdoor pool, from the most predominant winds in Melbourne, which are the southerly winds, and also air tightness. So the wet area is fully separated from the dry area, and it has an air tightness of 3 meter cubes per hour per meter square. The dry areas have about 5 meter cubes per hour per meter square. So once your passive design has actually been properly maximized in its efficiency, then we move to the active design. So with the ventilation system, the wet areas use what is called an open balance, which is a very low flow ventilation system, and to keep a very unified pressure. This minimizes the turbulence in the environment and generates what is called pretty much an insulation effect, because the air, it is an insulation layer, so as long as it's not moving, this helps reduce the losses of the indoor pools. Then we have the heat pump system. So the heat pump system works in a closed loop, and then heat exchangers remove the heating from that closed loop and take it to the pools or to the ambience. So there's 2 4-pipe heat pump system. So those 2 are actually working in parallel, and it's a redundant system to give that capacity for failure. And then there is a 3 2-pipe heat pump system that are actually working in series and heat up the water up to 65 degrees. Then each pool has its own closed loop system as well, where it heats up the water. It goes through all a filtration system, very optimal filtration system, and through a heat exchanger, and then back into the pools. So the main things that you need to consider is actually the gas that is inside your heat pumps and what the global warmth potential. The least you can achieve, the better, but also you need to play between efficiency and global warmth potential. So we actually managed to reduce it quite a lot, but you also need to detect any losses of your gas as soon as possible and try to fix those as soon as possible. Then we'll move to a third pillar. So the community resilience, it's very important because climate change is here. We are getting hotter days in summer, and the community actually really values these sites. It helps them keep cool in those very hot days. I actually reached capacity one day in summer, and even though this last summer wasn't actually that warm, it is expected that the days over 40 degrees become more and more common. So it is important to local governments to have those places of shelter in the community and to be able to protect them during heat waves. They have very strong health benefits, but also the Northcote Aquatic Centre has an external point of connection, so we could bring a generator if there's a blackout, and we could keep some essential services in that center operating if we were to use it, for example, as an emergency relief center. It has not been defined as one, but we could if it was required. And finally, the transition to electricity and this energy transition, it is a massive opportunity for everyone. There's over 2,000 aquatic centers in Australia, and the operations of this center actually takes over 300 jobs of an equivalent FTE of about 64. And for the redevelopment, there's about 1,400 jobs that were taken for over 2 years, and an equivalent of 83 FTE during those 2 years. So we're talking of tens of thousands of jobs in a multi-billion-dollar economy. So, and it is not just the process of rebuilding it, but also the use. So it was expected or designed so that the Northcote Aquatic Centre would bring about 3,000 subscribers in the first 3 months, and we actually achieved over 8,200 in the first 4 or 5 months. So that has been a massive success. To finalize, we have all the lessons learned, and it is very, very important that you work during the designing phases with your operators and your users. So you don't want to have a design that is later on not properly operated or used by the community members. So understand what their needs are and what are their behaviors, because also behavioral change can be really tricky. For example, taking showers before going into the pools. It is a behavioral change. So you need to understand how you're going to achieve that. It is not that straightforward. Technology is great, but if people are not really able to understand it, then they will get frustrated and they may not use it as you want to. Try to capture as much data as you can. Try to understand which data you will need later on to understand how the building is performing, so that you have that from the design phases and you have all those meters and all those data gathering from the beginning. Solar might take a long time to process in approvals, so jump into that straight away so you don't lose that energy generation potential. And the messaging that you want to pass to your community as well, it's very important, so that it is also captured in the design phase and you don't end up with like a lot of signage here and there. There's a lot of other things that I could talk about in terms of the design and the lessons learned, but yeah, I think those are like the most easy ones to pick up here. But if you do have any questions or do you want to follow up on anything, please do not hesitate, send me an email and I'll be happy to go through it with you. Thank you.